the Fourth and 30 podcast. Glad to have you again with us this week. The Super Bowl has ended. We got 7 lonely months until football kicks back on. And, we really only have basketball because baseball is not on the table at the moment. So we're going to go ahead and cover I thought it was a pretty good game in the Super Bowl. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that. Um, we'll just dive in. What's one big takeaway you had from the Super Bowl? Anybody?
I think the big takeaway is Matt Stafford getting his ring. Like, well deserving, good guy, great quarterback. Finally getting over the hump. The big narrative, and it's true, is he spent 13 years in Detroit, I think it was. 11 years,
Over a
something like
decade,
that. Yeah,
12. Yeah.
in Detroit, and made the playoffs 2 or 3 times. One playoff win, I think, maybe zero. I don't even know. And then 1 year in LA, which granted, everybody knows LA bought out for a super team for this goal. So he had the best team in football around him. But good on Matt Stafford for getting one in 1 year on a good team.
Yeah, I mean, he came up big on the.
Yeah, Matt Stafford. Okay, so Matt Stafford, he took Eminem "Lose Yourself" to heart at halftime. He heard it from the locker room because this was Matt Stafford's one and only shot. Now there is talk of maybe next year they can run it back. But 2-3 years out, this team's not going to be together. They're going to have to retool, and which has led me to that point. But hats off to Matt Stafford. That was my one big takeaway too. I'll have to come up with some. I don't know how you could not like Matt Stafford. He played in Detroit, didn't have a chance there, but I mean, yeah, I'm really happy for him. And the better quarterback won this game. Joe Burrow, you're gonna be great, but you're gonna have other chances. But Matt Stafford showed up. The defenses were playing really well. Obviously, the offensive lines weren't holding up. And it got to the fourth quarter, and Stafford's final shot came up, and he rose to the occasion. Him and Cooper Kupp, and I'll get to Cooper Kupp in a minute. But just really happy for Matt Stafford, and he didn't blink after that many years in Detroit, where you're just playing injured. Most people give up, and he didn't give up. He didn't blink in this game when he was under pressure the whole second half, and he rose. It was very impressive. We started talking about him maybe getting in the Hall of Fame. That was a Hall of Fame performance. Unfortunately for him, he played in Detroit for too long. But that's a topic for another discussion. I'm just happy for Matt Stafford.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of echo what Kyler said. The defenses were the story of this game for most of the game. I think it showed in this game a little bit. One, that the Bengals O-line is terrible. But two, I think we were jumping the gun a little bit on Joe Burrow. I think he has a great future in the league. But I think people were jumping the gun just a little bit on him. And then Matt Stafford, when it was time, came through for the Rams. A Bengals defense that had their way pretty much all game, couldn't stop him in the final drive. That's what you want your quarterback to do in the biggest lights, and that's what Matt Stafford did. He rose to the opportunity. Hats out to him. I think the Rams defense had, 7 sacks, or it was an insane amount of sacks in this game, 7 sacks or something like that. They came out and played well. Jalen Ramsey got beat a couple times, but Jalen Ramsey still played well most of the game on Jamar Chase, and he guarded Higgins a little bit too, but most of the game on Jamar Chase. Rams defense played well, Bengals defense played well, and Matt Stafford showed up when it mattered. Also, hats off to Sean McVay, youngest coach ever to win a Super Bowl. Had a chance 3 years ago to become the youngest coach to win a Super Bowl. 3 years later, comes back and is still the youngest coach to win a Super Bowl. That's impressive right there.
It is very impressive.
F them picks. But no, so it is hard to not be happy for Matt Stafford. After seeing, like, we all see it year in, year out, just the complete, just absolute crap show that is the Detroit Lions. So, I am happy for him. That Hall of Fame thing, we'll get into at a different time, but I don't see that happening. But he did play well, but he didn't play lights out. Like, I don't want people to think that he played lights out. Yes, OBJ tore his ACL in a non-contact injury. You never want to see that happen, obviously.
NFL needs to
But
get rid of turf like
when
now.
when OBJ was on the field, Stafford was 10 of 12 for 140 yards and 2 TDs. Off the field, still an okay completion percentage, 16 of 28 for 148 yards, 1 TD, and 2 interceptions. So, like, it did go down not having that other target. And he did eventually figure out how to get the ball to Cup there in the fourth quarter. Like, we all saw that. But, you know, it was by no means his best performance of all time. He just played well enough to beat the Bengals on that day.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, the Bengals defense was pretty great. Not just like a mediocre performance. They were pretty great. The Rams had 23 carries for 43 yards. You don't even have to do that math to know that's less than 2 yards a carry. Like that's stymieing another team's whole half of their offense right there. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um. So both defenses played really, really well. The Rams or the Bengals kept Burrow fairly clean in the first half. Rams had majority of their sacks in the second half. I don't remember the exact numbers, but the Rams got to him when it mattered. When it mattered, Aaron Donald made the 2 final plays to seal the game by holding. Was it Mixon or Perrine that carried the ball? Perrine harried him, held him on a 3rd and 1, literally by one arm, held him from going forward, and then got the pressure on Burrow there on the final play. But back to OBJ quite a bit. OBJ proved himself this year. And with coming off another ACL injury, the second one of his career, that contract's not going to be near as big. But OBJ proved that he is an elite wide receiver. He is not a cancer to his team like some people in Cleveland tried to paint him as. There was a lot of people that stuck up for him when he was cut and said, no, he's a great teammate. He was always supportive. But coming back out from the locker room after being diagnosed with a torn ACL and cheering on his team and having tears of joy when they won just showed how good of a teammate OBJ is. And then he was balling out early in the game before that happened. So good on him. He left his mark on that game for only getting to play a quarter and some change. And then my other big thing was Eli Apple getting burnt all game long. As a petty, pissed off Chiefs fan, after how he was mouthing McCole and Tyreek on Twitter, it was good to see him be the reason the Bengals lost towards the end of the game. It's because that Bengals defense was lights out except for him. He was the one weak spot in that defense that night. So that was just a little satisfying. And then McCole and I think it was just Hardman that poked back at him on Twitter afterwards. But then the Ravens joined in. Some other guys around the league joined in. And then the picture of the burnt toast with the number 20 or whatever he is on it was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, McCole
Yeah.
sent him a picture of his Super Bowl ring and said, "When you get one of these, you can talk," or something like that.
And Lamar had the picture of him wearing those great big visor sunglasses and then the Photoshop cigarette while he was sitting on the bench. That was just classic.
Eli Apple got what was coming to him for sure. Back to Odell, I had a little something on him. I agree with Cody, what you said. He was the scapegoat in Cleveland, but he clearly wasn't the problem. I mean, we've all seen that video of Odell running down the sideline wide open, and Baker didn't even look his way. And the Cleveland Browns fan just saying, I feel sorry for Odell. That's the truth. Odell's a good teammate. Yeah, he's loud and might be obnoxious on social media at times, but he's clearly a good teammate. I mean, and you saw the difference in this Rams team without him. Van Jefferson couldn't get open. The third receiver, number 18, can't remember his name, had a ball right in his hands that got picked off and, almost was a big game-changing play in that game. And that leads me to my next point. The Rams were trying to go to their secondary receivers because Cooper Kupp was getting double-teamed the whole game. Deservedly so. It wasn't working. What they do on the last drive, I don't care if Cooper Kupp's double-teamed. We're throwing the ball to you. Cooper Kupp was the league MVP this year. He got robbed miles ahead of anybody at his position this year. And quarterbacks, obviously, there's MVP candidates, quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers had a deserving year. But this was the perfect year to give it to a receiver. And look at all the playoff wins that the Rams won and who came up clutch in those games. Matt Stafford, and Cooper Kupp was that was the clutchest playoff run by a receiver of all time, maybe not named Jerry Rice. And hands down, in the fourth quarter and overtime, he came up big in every game. He was the league MVP this year. I wish they would have gave it to him, but he settled for Super Bowl MVP, and it's hard to argue with. That dude, you can't say enough about the performance that Cooper Kupp had, not only in the regular season, but in the stretch of the playoff games. But back to Odell, he shouldn't take this. He shouldn't feel like he didn't earn the Super Bowl. Without him, they wouldn't have made it to the Super Bowl, and he's very deserving of it as well.
Yeah, so to piggyback on the Cooper Cup thing, you brought up Jerry Rice. And so Cooper Cup this year, he had 33 receptions in the playoffs. No receiver has ever done that before, not even Jerry Rice. And then this year, just this season, Cooper Cup won the receiving Triple Crown, Offensive Player of the Year, and Super Bowl MVP. There's only one other receiver who's done that in a career, and that's Jerry Rice. And Cup did it in one season. So I do kind of see your point that, like, we've talked about this before, MVP versus MOP, and like Cup was the most outstanding player in football this year. It's tough that quarterbacks get the edge when it comes to MVP votes just because they're the face of a team. Like that does kind of suck because Cup was the best player in football this year.
Yes, he was.
But
He probably put together. I don't even think it's a probably. He definitely put together the best season by a receiver ever. I mean, what he ended up with 2,243 yards receiving or something like that, counting the playoffs. And like you said, triple crown, offensive player of the year, Super Bowl MVP. That's insane. Like that's unheard of.
And he did it on the final drive without a second receiver getting double teamed by a good defense. Just to add to it.
What week was it when we were talking about is he a top 10 receiver? Like I feel stupid even bringing that up now because I mean this dude has to be the best receiver in the game right now. Like I don't even think there's a question about it. And it's weird saying that. Like you watch him, he's not as ooh or ah as some guys, but he just finds ways to get open, finds ways to beat guys. His route running is insane. He's a big target. He's not as slow as people think. He's not fast, but he's not as slow as people think. He hats off to Cooper Kupp. Rams definitely would not have won the Super Bowl without him.
Stafford said it a couple weeks ago. Was it against Tampa when Kupp had that big reception down late? I think it was against Tampa.
Yeah.
And he said that Kupp was just running a for the love of the game route. Just go run your butt off. You're probably not going to get the ball, but like Kupp is that good at running routes that he got open. So that for the love of the game thing, that's a football IQ that you can't teach, right? So that's anytime you can get a receiver that understands the game at that level, then they're just going to be better than 98% of the other wide receivers in the league.
So I think one factor it wasn't a major factor. One small factor in the Rams' lack of, not necessarily lack of running the ball, but lack of passing once OBJ went down and losing that target or that threat was about the whole first half. I was sitting there wondering, like, where's Higbee at? Their tight end. Like, he's not an elite tight end, but he's good. And then finally I just looked and he was ruled out, injured reserve for the game. And that had a little bit to do with it because he's a good pass catcher. He's not an elite tight end.
But he was a huge part of their offense this year.
They used him a lot. And I think that was part of the problem down the stretch with not being able to get Jefferson or Cooper Kupp open for quite a while after OBJ went down. But the Rams found a way. Hats off to Sean McVay for having the right stuff to call there at the end of the game.
Yeah, you don't make it to the Super Bowl without some injuries. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, so, I do want to go back to the Rams defense. So if Cooper Kupp wasn't going to win the MVP, it would have had to have been Aaron Donald, right? I think we can all kind of agree on that.
Matt Stafford. You could make an argument for Matt Stafford.
Aaron Donald played better than Stafford. But Burrow was pressured on 42.5% of his snaps. That is an insane number. And that's not just on Aaron Donald. That's Von Miller, and I think the guy's number is 97 down in there in the middle. But that that is an insane number. So
Don't forget
it
Leonard
was
Floyd. Leonard Floyd's a beast too on the
it
outside.
was not unknown to us that the Bengals O line was in trouble, right? Um, but I don't think any of us could have predicted that much in trouble. That was as big a mismatch as you will ever see, probably on that scale, in it like in a Super Bowl, especially. Um, and so where I want to go with that is, do you guys, Burrow's a young up and comer, and he's getting ready to have his time in the spotlight. If Cincinnati doesn't fix that O line, is Joe Burrow the next Andrew Luck? Injury after injury, retire at 30.
I think there's a
I mean,
good chance.
it's hard to predict a guy retiring at 30. I mean, these guys, you assume that they love what they're doing, but the Bengals do need to fix that offensive line because I saw the stats. Hold on, let me bring it up. You talk and I'll bring it up.
Yeah, he had an average of like 2.4 seconds to throw the ball all night long.
Well, one thing about it is he he's tough. Like Joe Burrow is a competitor and he's tough. There's not a whole lot of quarterbacks in the league that can take those hits, play after 42% of plays, and get back up and stand in that pocket again. A lot of them guys are gonna wither and just be chucking the ball anywhere around the field. But he did. I mean, he stood tall in that pocket and took his licks because of it.
So the Bengals played 4 games in the playoffs. Burrow was sacked 19 times. Stafford in their 4 games was sacked 7. Mahomes in his 3 games was sacked 9. That was partly on Mahomes too, how he was
And
playing.
0 of those were in the Chiefs game.
Yeah, 19. Yeah, he was sacked 0 times against the Chiefs and still sacked 19 times. That is insane.
Yeah, that's a high number. I would say it's a stretch to say he'd be the next Andrew Luck at this point.
I mean, that's hard to predict
You
that.
you got to think the Bengals will shore up their offensive line. There's nowhere to go but up from here. So, I mean, yeah, it's possible, but I don't see Burrow going anywhere anytime soon.
But
Now,
he
if in
wouldn't be
3
able to
years he
take
still
these
gets
kind of
sacked too
hits
much,
if he wasn't 25 years old. If he was 32 or 33 years old, he'd be in a body bag. Like,
yeah, for sure. If in a few years he's still taking that many hits, the guy's got to be like, what's going on here? But you got to think that the Bengals' #1 objective in the draft this year is to draft some linemen.
You would think, but that's what I was getting ready to say, is it is the Bengals. You would think their ownership or leadership sees that this opportunity for the next 5 to 7, 8 years as a golden opportunity for this franchise, who has been a step better than the Detroit Lions over the last 30 years, as a golden opportunity to rejuvenate the city, rejuvenate the fans, be good for a while, other than 2 years where Andy Dalton was red rocketing shit all around the field. And they have to protect Burrow. They have to keep Chase and Higgins and Boyd happy, and then somehow find a way to shore up this offensive line to make sure that your young star, soon to be superstar quarterback doesn't get carted off the field in the body bag in the next year or two.
they've
Well,
already done it once. Go ahead, Kai.
that's why it's so hard to win a Super Bowl. I mean, early on in Big Ben's career, he took a ton of sacks, and then later on, they shored up that offensive line. He never got sacked, but their defense was not up to par. Like, you got to find the balance, but definitely their #1 priority should be to protect the franchise. Joe Burrow is the franchise, and so if that's not their #1 priority, it needs to be for sure.
So, just in last year's draft, they did the example of this. And granted, it worked out. Jamar Chase turned out to be a stud, but they looked over Penei Sewell at tackle to get Chase. So, they've proven that they're going to get, which Jamar Chase is kind of a special exception because he played with Burrow at LSU and he is a good player. Like, that all did work out, but Burrow still got sacked 70 plus times this year, including the playoffs. So it's like,
There
long
was
term wear and tear.
there was the meme, and I'm going to pause for a few seconds, and I'm going to find it on the internet, and I'm going to put it in the video when I go to edit this. But the meme of, it's a quarterback throwing the ball, and it says Joe Burrow, and he's getting sacked, and it says Jamar Chase clear downfield, and then there's the one where he's throwing the bomb, and it says literally anyone else, but then it's got Penei Sewell blocking for him, so he's not getting sacked. That was untrue for 20 games this year. It was true for the game that mattered the most.
The last play of the most important game because Jamar Chase is wide open downfield as Joe Burrow's getting hit.
Yeah. I have 2 more points on here. So it was a good game. The first half, the refs kind of swallowed the whistle a little bit too hard, maybe. That Ramsey face mask wasn't called. Do you think all that went down on 3rd and goal, them overlooking the blatant false start by every member of the offensive line, and then calling that kind of ticky-tack defensive holding, do you think that was make-up call for giving the Bengals a touchdown on that face mask no call on Jalen Ramsey?
I would like to think that refs don't try and do makeup calls because but I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. One thing I will say though, you brought this up. It irritated the heck out of me this year. There were so many missed false start calls, and I don't understand how you miss false starts. But this year there were so many missed false start calls. Like they're obvious on your TV screen. So how does a ref not see it? Like I don't understand.
Mhm.
Because the refs had secret meetings before the year. We want to continue to make it harder on the defense. So let's give the tackles a little bit of a head start and see if we can get away with it.
Well, you see, the NFL set up as an entertainment business, not a sports business. So they told Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and Tyreek Hill they had to lose the game. That's why they looked so dejected in the Bengals game.
Yeah, there was also Aaron Donald was very, very, very offsides on a 4th and 1. It was not that fourth quarter 4th and 1, but it was at like the 49-yard line. He was very, very offsides. And I don't know how stuff like that doesn't get called either. You literally
Yeah.
have 2 refs on either side of the ball looking.
They had one job.
Whatever.
Typically, the refs do warn a player like, "Hey, you were offsides. Don't do it again." But on a 4th and 1, they usually do not give you that. Like 4th and 1, you're
Yeah.
calling that every time.
And I don't know that it does anything. McPherson does have a leg, but
Yeah.
whatever. Man, I so badly wanted McPherson to trot out there and send it to overtime. Even if the Rams still wanted overtime, just to get McPherson's swagger out there. This was such a fun season. And that would have been just a fun way to go out. It was still a good game to go out on, but this was such an up and down and crazy season that it would have been fun to send the Super Bowl into overtime.
Yeah, McPherson is so good. I was driving through Kirksville today, and they've already named a street after him in Kirksville, Missouri. E. McPherson Street. E. McPherson. Evan McPherson. Couldn't believe it.
There's an E. McWilliams Street in Leonard, Missouri. Eat your heart out. But
I think
there's
that one
been
stands for East.
oh yeah. There's been 3 players in NFL history to compete in the Super Bowl in their 40s. Jerry Rice, Tom Brady, and Andrew Whitworth. I want to talk about this guy for a second because big guys don't get a lot of love. And this is probably the end of his career, and he's had a damn good one. 16,000 snaps and less than 60 sacks allowed. That is bananas. So hats off to you, big fella. And if you do decide to retire, hope you enjoy it. Be with your kids. Do whatever the hell you want to do. You played a hell of a career, bud.
How many?
And played most of it in Cincinnati, and then
Yeah.
had to beat Cincinnati in this final game. That's kind of fun twist.
How many sacks did you say?
Less than 60 is what the thing said.
Yeah, he's also well known for the community work that he does. He's just a great guy. He deserves the recognition. He's also, if you talk to a lot of younger players in the league, been a great mentor to a lot of younger players in the league. So he's one of the unheralded heroes of the NFL for the past 20 years.
For sure. You heard a lot of good things coming out. I know I shared that story about him, the Lions player that came up to him after the game and said, "Hey, Evan or Andrew, how's it going, man?" And Andrew Whitworth's like, "I don't know who this guy is." He's like, "You probably won't remember me. That's all right. You mentored me at the Boys and Girls Club in Cincinnati when you played with the Bengals." He's like, "I just wanted to tell you I made it, man. I made it." And you just like to hear stuff like that.
Yeah. That's stuff you can't buy. That's you being a genuinely nice person and having a good heart, and also being one hell of an athlete. Like to play this long, to still have the energy to go out in your community and do things like that. Like you can't teach that, you can't buy that. That you got to be born with that. So
Yeah, it's
hats off to
awesome.
him.
So, real quick, if my math is correct, that is a sack on less than 0.3% of snaps. So, not even half of 1% of snaps. That's
3 out of
unreal.
1,000.
Yeah,
Called
3.
job security.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's unreal.
Alrighty, and then my very last thing for the Super Bowl is how pathetic was that Rams crowd at the parade? Did you guys see any of
I
that?
didn't see it.
LA, man.
Bro,
It's
LA is not an NFL town. That was pathetic. Can you imagine the ruckus if Cincinnati would have won it? That town would still be on fire. If Buffalo were to win one, that town would cease to exist. They'd have to
There,
move to Toronto.
there
Like
would be
it,
0 folding tables within 200 miles of Buffalo.
There would be folding tables that were broken,
all over the place.
Yeah,
all of them.
there'd be
going
0
back to
usable
Walmart,
ones.
they're trying to return folding tables on the day after the Super Bowl.
Oh, man.
Now, I live 4 hours from Buffalo, so I'll just cart a whole bunch of them up here and sell them for like $20 more than they're worth and make bank.
Yep, there you go.
Alrighty. Anybody else have anything else on the Super Bowl?
Yeah, we haven't talked about the highlight of the Super Bowl yet, which was the halftime show.
Oh yeah, the thing that made everybody mad
Okay,
because
yeah.
nobody can
So,
enjoy something good.
if you're a boomer, go ahead and you can go find something else to watch now. You're probably not going to be very happy from here on out. The Super
I
Bowl
mean,
show was the halftime show was awesome.
Yeah.
fantastic. One of the best 3 or 4 ever. I mean, the only one I can even think of that compares to it is Prince, honestly, off the top of my head. I don't know what else there's. And I personally like this one better, obviously, because I can, I
Yeah.
grew up and listened to it. But
So right hand to the man, I did enjoy the Katy Perry one. There was a lot of theatrics in that one, if you
the Left
remember.
Shark.
I like Katy Perry too.
The coming in from the thing. Lady Gaga also did a good job, like
The one
theatrical
that's
wise.
when talking about favorite
Janet
halftime
Jackson.
shows. No, funny story about that. I'm not going to tell online. Is Maroon 5. I don't even remember how long ago it was, but I still remember
Yeah,
the
sure.
Maroon 5
I do remember that one.
or
Someone was
halftime
with them
show.
too. Who was with them on that one?
I don't remember. I
Well,
just
There
remember.
was another big name with them. I can't
Yeah.
remember who it was.
But
That
yes,
was
this
Adam.
is the cream of the crop of, it's up there. It's in the conversation for best ever. My favorite take was that 50 Cent forgot he was a whole dollar now before hanging upside down. And you will not convince me otherwise that Eminem was not lip syncing, or that he was lip syncing. I stand by that. Whatever, it was still a great performance, but
The Rams owe Eminem the Super Bowl because without him singing that song, Stafford doesn't see the light. I'm convinced.
The closest Detroit will ever get to a Super Bowl is seeing Eminem and Matthew Stafford in one.
yep.
No, so everybody wanted to hate on that halftime show for, some of the political views those rappers have had over the past. And you know what I have to say to that? How many of your grand old country singers talk about moving weight and doing cocaine and, driving drunk and doing all that? So I don't want to hear it. Like, yeah, it's one thing to view something differently because of systemic racism, but it's also no different for you to idolize these other people that are also talking about doing illegal things. So, you can't have it both ways, right? So it's either you got to be against this illegal activity or, let people have fun. Quit being fun haters, guys. Like it's the biggest dumbest thing in the world is being a fun hater for something that the mass majority of Americans enjoyed. Anybody that was probably under the age of
Overwhelming
50.
majority enjoyed that.
I mean, how does the halftime show even? How do politics even come to that? The second people stop bringing politics into the halftime show, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Just enjoy the halftime show. Enjoy the game.
Yeah. My other takeaway from the halftime show was I couldn't find the meme again, but I shared what it said with you guys, is that our generation is saying finally they made something for the youth. And then we realize that it's the same amount of time since their heyday as it was Paul McCartney and we were like, oh, this music's for old people. Or Prince when he
The
was doing
Who.
his halftime show, or The Who,
Well,
yeah.
And
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 then
then
then,
it
right
hit
after
you.
Janet Jackson, then it was like Paul McCartney, The Who, like all these. And we're just like, come on, guys. Like, but when
And then
we're
it hit you.
60, it'll be BTS or something. Be like, oh, what the hell are these guys
yeah,
doing up there? Like,
yeah. And I saw another one that said, I hope all the millennials enjoyed this halftime show because of the boomers. We're going to be getting country music for the next 10 years straight.
I think Garth Brooks would do a good job, though.
Yeah,
You know,
he would.
of country people that put on a show, Garth Brooks, I think, would do okay. But
I think
all
Luke
right,
Bryan is going to do a Super Bowl halftime show at some point,
yeah, I'd
right?
say he'd be in that ballpark. Probably Carrie Underwood before Luke Bryan.
I would watch that.
I would watch a Carrie Underwood halftime
I
show.
wait all week for Sunday Night Football.
All right, that's all I really have. Just Cody, is there anything going on in the basketball world?
The
I
big
guess
trade,
Harden and
yeah, the big trade this week with Harden going to the Sixers, and then Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 draft picks, I think, coming to the Nets. The every team, I shouldn't say every team, most every team, majority of teams are better when James Harden's on the floor with you as long as he plays correctly. James Harden's a phenomenal passer. The whole idea of him being a ball hog, he takes questionable shots sometimes, but what NBA superstar doesn't. But I really think the Nets won this trade because the Sixers, their best player is a big man. Now, granted, their big man is more skilled than your typical big man, but when you have a big man that's your best player, you need shooting around you. That's why Ben Simmons didn't fit in there. Ben Simmons was the scapegoat. I don't really particularly like Ben Simmons, but he's a very, very talented basketball player. He's going to the Nets with Kyrie Irving, KD, Patty Mills, LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, all guys who can somewhat shoot the ball around him, or very elite shooters with KD and Seth Curry and Patty Mills. He's going to flourish in that system as long as he's mentally checked in. The Nets' problem is on defense, and at times Ben Simmons is the best defender in the league, so that shores up that. They have another point forward. You know, KD's not a great facilitator, but he's good because he draws so much pressure. You got another guy like Ben Simmons who can facilitate, play that point forward, Scottie Pippen role. The Nets, if they get everyone healthy, everyone back, everyone on the floor, they got better. The Sixers.
Yeah, I think.
so
Go ahead.
I mean, both teams at this point, both teams won this trade. They both traded nothing and got better. So the question boils down to: are these players that they got, are they going to be engaged? You never. If Harden's engaged, he's one of the best players in the NBA. If Simmons is engaged, I agree. He fits in very well with that team. Um, the real who wins this trade, I guess, is who makes it further in the playoffs. But both teams got better because both teams should get better, ideally. But yeah, who's going to make it further in the conference or make it to the finals, I guess, will be the ultimate who won this trade.
over or under 3 double doubles out of Ben Simmons where he does not score 10 or more points.
3?
3.
I'll go over that.
I'd say that's a safe bet. I'd say 3's a
Yeah.
really good line.
I'd say over. I would say the only thing I would say about this is, and I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at this the wrong way because Kyrie and Harden and KD can't coexist. But realistically, barring Kyrie and Harden being injured in the Bucks series last year, the Nets probably good chance they win the championship last year.
Yep.
And I understand there's a lot going on in Brooklyn, and it's not as simple as to say that, but to have to disperse that talent that you just had, the team that just should have won the championship, barring injuries, and have to make trades to try and get better, that's not a good look to me. I don't know. I mean, you were that close. You probably should have won last year, and now you're not getting rid of the whole team, but you're getting rid of Harden, who was I mean, you're saying if he was healthy, we would have won the championship. The only thing I
The
would say,
players
though,
just have all the power,
yeah,
and they
you're right.
force their hand, really.
And the other thing I would say about this is one reason why the Nets might have won is because they didn't mortgage any of their future like the Sixers did. If the Sixers don't win a championship with this trade, they lose immediately because they traded 2 draft picks along with those players.
If they could have got out of this without giving up draft picks, it'd have been a very good trade for them. If they
Yeah.
don't win immediately, Harden leaves in a couple years, and they're out those draft picks, they're in bad shape.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I don't even know if Harden will stay there long term because he's going to want a
That's
ton of
where
money.
that's where he wanted to go out of Houston though, because he's so close with Daryl Morey, his former
Well, Embiid
GM.
might leave too if they don't
Yeah.
win.
Yeah.
Too.
I had another thing I was going to say about that trade and slipping my mind right now. Keep talking. I'll interrupt somebody if it comes back to me.
Yeah. So I do think the Sixers got the better end of that deal. Anytime you can get James Harden, you're winning that trade. The Nets are still -2 draft picks from getting James Harden the first time. So yeah, they got 2 of them back, but they're still down 2 first-round picks from that. So it's not, they did get some back, but the Sixers are in a good position to win the East now, because they can, you have 2 of the more dynamic players in the NBA at 2 of your arguably really needed positions, 1 and 5. Harden can play the 1. I know he's a 2, but like he can play your 1. So I do think the Sixers got better, and all the Nets did was take away somebody that's going to shoot, right? So that kind of is what it is. But did you guys see just last night, after one practice with James Harden, Joel Embiid tried the James Harden step back? He got
Yep.
He got
swatted
called
to
for a
oblivion, but he
So I remembered what it was now, is that I didn't know this until the trade happened and the analysts were talking about it. Kyrie and James Harden did not get along very well. And the problem is because James Harden was mad that Kyrie wasn't a full-time player, and that Kyrie, who is a very capable defensive player when he wants to be, would absolutely lock Harden up in practice, and it would piss Harden off. And so, I didn't know that those two didn't get along. You never heard anything about.
No, that started before they even got James Harden. Kyrie tweeted that he didn't want James Harden on the team. So I don't know what started it or where it started, but they didn't like each other before they were even on the same team.
So there's
And
a
it
lot of things.
continued.
There's a lot of things going around right now because I heard there was a spat between Harden, Irving, and KD because Irving and KD wanted to play a style of offense that the ball flowed more, and Harden wanted to play a style of offense that, how Harden plays, that he was
ISO.
more ball dominant and he like had the ball in his hands more, and then tried to facilitate that way. I heard that was what the spat was between those three.
Anytime you
Obviously, if
get
you
3
guys,
egos like that in one room, it's going to be hard.
the funniest thing out of all this was when they were drafting the All-Star teams, and James Harden is on the board all the way through, and KD, who did he draft?
Rudy Gobert,
Rudy
who he
Gobert.
does
Rudy
not
Gobert.
like.
He's like, yeah, I think we're gonna need some size to lock up LeBron and Giannis, so we're gonna go with Gobert. And LeBron's just sitting there with the folder over his face, trying not to laugh.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. It's saying something when you're saying
Hello?
KD's the most
hear
unselfish
you
out
now.
of those 3. There we go. We got you back. It's definitely saying something when you say KD's the most unselfish player out of all 3 of those. Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah. The best part of that too was Chuck egging it all along too, because Chuck's such an instigator. And when LeBron held that clipboard up over his face, Chuck said, "Why you got that clipboard for, LeBron? Like, is it?" And then he told KD he needed a clipboard to hold up over his face. Like, it just made the whole situation even that much funnier.
AD kept a
But-
straight face too until the very end when Chuck
Yeah.
was saying something.
Didn't a year or 2 before KD troll LeBron with somebody, though? Made LeBron pick somebody last that he didn't really want. There was something there. So
Oh,
is
I don't
LeBron
remember. I
getting
guess I
KD
didn't see that
back?
one.
I saw it on Twitter. I can't remember who it was, but So yeah, that's what's going on in the sports world. We're kind of in the doldrums. Oh, the Winter Olympics, right? So have you guys seen? Have I talked about Eileen Goo on the Winter Olympics on this podcast yet? So Eileen Goo is an 18-year-old born and raised in San Francisco. Her dad is from the United States. Her mom is from China. Uh, she chose to play these Olympic Games for China instead of the United States. When she does all of her training here, she's just graduated high school. She's going to go to Stanford University. She's getting an education here. All of this, she's using all the resources the United States has to offer, competing for China. And she won gold in big ski. And so that just kind of rubbed me wrong a little bit. Like I get it. She left for money, obviously. I mean, she's made over $40 million playing for China from endorsements. So like I get it from that standpoint. But if you want to play for China, go live in China. Like I know this sounds like a homer mentality, whatever, but like don't do that. Don't live here. You know, we've lost soccer players to Mexico before. Like, you know, it's not something that's new, but it's like, come on. Like if you're gonna be here, train here, your coach is here, like all of that, play for us.
It,
So, I
it
mean,
it ought to be illegal. I know that you can get dual citizenship and do it, um, and all that whatnot. But in high school basketball, is my example, you can't live in one school district and go play for another school district just because you want to. You have to play for the school district that you reside in. And the Olympics should be the same way. There's a lot of basketball guys who have the U.S. doesn't really deal with it because everybody that lives in the U.S. wants to play for the U.S. But there's a lot of basketball guys that have dual citizenship and play for one team while living in another, or play for one country while living in another, and it's not right in my book, but I guess it's the way it is with the Olympics.
The only thing I would say on it is like I'll take Pau Gasol or Luis Scola or those guys for example. Like they're from Spain, so I get them wanting to play for Spain, even though they live in the U.S. and play in the NBA. I get that, like wanting to represent your own home country. Yeah, I don't really get why you'd. I mean, I guess the money aspect. I do think Cody's onto something though. Like unless you're born in the country or live there permanently, maybe you shouldn't be able to play for another country. That being said, hats off to the 18-year-old girl for getting $40 million in endorsements. Like I'm not going to hate on
yeah.
somebody on doing that, but I don't disagree with the sentiment of what you're saying.
So, one more Olympic thing before we wrap up. The girl from Russia, whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, that the 15-year-old
The heart
ice
drug
skater,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah, figure
so
skater.
has a heart drug problem that is on the banned substance list, and it's a performance enhancing drug. It gives endurance or lets you have more endurance, which can be a big thing in a 4-minute program in figure skating. But yet, Sha'Carri Richardson ban was upheld for marijuana, which is not a performance enhancer. It's a performance de-enhancer, if anything. And she was not
It
allowed to
could put you
play.
in the zone, though.
Yeah, well, in sprinting, I don't know about how
The
in the
zone,
zone yet. Yeah.
focus
It's
on that
also
finish line.
Russia, right? And so
Yeah.
Russia's had all of these problems throughout the year. They can't even compete at the Olympic Games under the name of Russia. It's Russia Olympic Committee. That's how bad of a history they have. Yeah, she should not be allowed to skate, and the Olympic Committee let her skate, but it's like, no, you had this drug
So,
in your system.
so let me clear this up. She has a heart condition, or she was just taking a drug.
All I know is she had the drug in her system.
Okay, because how he started, I couldn't tell if he was going to say she had a heart condition or if she was taking
I
a
don't
drug.
know which one it is. She took
But
a
it's
drug that
Russia.
was for a heart condition, living in a country that is under the biggest doping scandal of all time right now. It's not a good look for the Olympic Committee. And by God, if she has a real heart condition and needs this drug to function day to day or stay alive, I feel bad that she's in that condition, but rules are rules. If you're going to uphold it with marijuana use, you got to uphold it with other performance enhancing drugs too.
I don't know. I think if she has a heart condition, it's a little bit different situation. But that's just me. But the Shakari Richardson thing is a joke. That's the
Well, we
stupidest.
found out who the Ruski is in here.
Yeah,
Comrade.
yeah.
I did have one basketball thing that popped
I'm-
in my brain, and then we could sign off. Kai, you got an Olympic thing.
I was just gonna say there should be a process for that. There clearly isn't. If someone has a heart problem and needs a drug that's on the ban, there should be a process, for that to see if she can even compete. I mean, and the marijuana thing, whatever. That's a joke. But I'm not saying what's right or wrong. There just needs to be a process for it to make sure, you know, there clearly isn't.
In the NBA, in future CBAs, do you see, and I know the players are going to push back on this, but do you see a time, maybe not 10 years from now, but 30, 40 years from now, where if a player decides to demand a trade, that there's going to be a floor on the salary that they can pay him just to sit him on the bench? So you don't have to keep paying him this big money while he's demanding a trade. Do you think that some of that's going to come back to owners? Because the players have a lot of power in the NBA right now, and I can see owners wanting to get some of that back.
They might try and do something. I don't think they're gonna like minimize a person's salary. I don't know how. I don't think you would ever get that approved in the CBA. I think there'd be a lockout before that would happen. But they might try and do something to try and get some of the power back.
I never knew that Kyler was
So
cross-eyed
you
until he
can
locked
go
up right there.
and wrap it up.
He said you can wrap it up.
Alrighty. Well, that's where we're going to leave you. Sorry for my kind of stumbling around there at the end. We'll get more fluid. There'll be a lot more basketball. March Madness is literally a couple weeks away. So get into some of that too on Coach K's final ride. But until then, be good out there. Tell your grandma that we care about her and we hope she cares about us. Peace.
And happy Valentine's Day to all the grandmas out there.
No, my phone's about to die.
Hey, Kai, tell everyone bye.
I do have a lazy eye.
Tell everyone bye.